Welcome, everybody. So I have a lot to say, and I try to actually organize it thoughtfully and intelligently. And while I'm doing this, if people have dying questions or issues or something like that, feel free to ask. I probably wouldn't have much time at the end to do Q&A. I'd be happy to do that. And obviously, I have some time tomorrow to talk about strategy, the company, geopolitics, and all those things. I just want to start with, we have like, what a company. I don't know about you guys, when I see this company in action, it just blows me away. And the quality of the people, the respect of our clients, how much they want us in countries around the world, it's extraordinary. It's all based upon the things that you do and how you do it, and things like that. How do we make sure we're going to do it and stay innovative and ambitious and disciplined while killing complacency, arrogance, bureaucracy? And so we're going to do a bunch of things. None of this is out of anger. It's just out of thought about kind of reinstilling some basic disciplines. You know, if you have 100 people, just can you live with the 100 people and make that work? And we should be able to. We're asking people, everyone, this is very important. Everyone in this room, I'm talking to you personally. When I give these examples, don't say that's something else, that's not my unit, that doesn't affect me. It does. I'm going to tell you why. Because all of you, you're responsible for this company that's worth $700 billion, 320,000 people, all the clients we've seen around the world. You individually are responsible, and you know more than you think. When you travel around, and you talk to people, and you have management meetings, you know more than you think. So we're asking people to do a 10% efficiency target. Again, it's a discipline. And what it basically is, think of as what you're going to, and this is just basic business. This is not AI. I'm going to talk about AI in a second. This is just, can you do less? So what are your units doing that you can do less, that you don't need to be doing at all, or things like that? I apologize when I'm being specific that it's you I'm talking about. Okay, I'm not, I got to get it off my chest about what we need to do and some of the things I've seen recently and over my career. I said speed kills, but I mean slow speed. Okay, I don't mean fast speed. And I wrote down just examples, okay, of winners and losers, and this is just over the last 20 or 30 years. Sears and Kmart, they're gone. Walmart has done well. Digital equipment, gone. A&P, the best supermarket in the world, disappeared, taken over by Kroger's, whatever. BlackBerry disappeared. Dell did well. Apple obviously has done well. Amazon has done well. Nokia basically disappeared. And and I go on and on with these examples. It's even worse in financial services, mostly because you can manipulate the numbers and over-leverage and stuff like that. But Travelers blew up. Citi blew up twice. Bear Stearns failed. Lehman failed. Bank One, I'm here because Bank One screwed up a bunch of businesses and stuff like that. The S&L business, the whole business got wiped out. The whole thing. Savings and loans do not exist anymore. And you know what it was? Interest rate mismatch. WAMU, interest rate mismatch. Silicon Valley Bank, interest rate mismatch. The whole mortgage business disappeared. 100% of the brokers and stuff like that disappeared. Kidder disappeared. Drexel disappeared. And these were, if you look at these things, it's complacency, it's bureaucracy, it's arrogance, it's slow to adjust. A lot of it's dishonest numbers. I'm going to give you some very specific examples. Failure to set standards, bad people, bad comp schemes, disincentives, bad incentives, politics, and these things are like all the cancer that kills companies. And we all have to be very cautious about when that takes place. And I'm going to give you examples about why I think it happens and how we have to combat it. Now, and it's even more important today because things are faster and more complex. I mean, the world is just faster and more complex. That means we got to move quicker, coordinate better, and do those things. I'm a fanatic about proper accounting. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to give you, again, specific examples where the accounting will lead you to the wrong answer. Regulatory rules will lead you to the wrong answer. Regulatory capital will lead you to the wrong answer, and yet we fall into this little echo chamber. So instead of know your numbers, I'm going to change it to get your numbers right. Understand them, analyze them, work them, test them, and don't be rote about it. I mean, you got to have the budget in the thing. You can't always compare yourself to forecast because then you're always very close. Okay, and it's just you got to show the budget. You got to show the budget. okay? And then the other one, which I hate, like really hate, is comparing yourself to peer average. I mean, really? Really? Is that what we're going to do? You should always compare yourself to the best. Where are they and where are we? Fixed and variable expenses matter. Jeremy mentioned it in the complexity of actually making decisions. This is where rote matters. You can't just say fully allocated or fully marginal. You have to like think about what matters in that thing. But marginal profitability is absolutely critical. You know, like when we look at, and Jeremy gave an example about, you know, anything we do, you know, the next $100 million of revenues, while the business may have a 14% return, and this could be almost anything we do, the next 100% is a margin of 80%, and therefore marginal ROE, and that's how you deploy capital. And so we have to always understand that. Rigorous review of allocated expenses. I'm going to give you an example, mostly about JPMorgan I give here. They are real expenses, you know, but you have the right to question them. You have to question them. Zero-based budgeting, I don't like asking people to do it. It's like too hard, but you got to think that way. Like if I start from ground, I have 100 people doing this thing. What do I do differently? And so a P&L is not an assessment of a business. You got to do the full assessment. Customer metrics, turnover, apps, technology, whatever's important is what I'm talking about when we talk about numbers. It's not the P&L. In fact, the P&L could be the most deceptive thing of all, and telling you and giving the wrong answer. And proper project reporting. Again, whenever you have a project, and this is on it, you have to. It could be technology, it could be anything else. What did we say when we started it, and where are we today? And like I remember getting to JPMorgan, and one after another, every project was like on course, but from the last forecast. But I said, no, show me where it was from the beginning, and every single one was a year or two late. And it's just an honest assessment. It's not to blame yourselves or get mad about it, and also the project morphed without any discussion. And I think that's just a bad management thing. So external reporting actually matters. Okay, so I'm always quite careful when we report externally as real. A lot of companies, it's not real. And what happens inside a company is people start running that way. And you've never seen me spin analysts. And if I spin analysts, you're going to spin us. That's it. You know, I want to honestly show how we compare to other people. Constant investment. You know, the notion you go stop-start investments is a bad idea. Constant transformation in technology and conversions. And you can't have stop-start strategies almost anywhere. Proper assumptions. You know, what do you do when your spread on deposits is 0, but you're opening branches? You know, what do you do? That's why I always talk about through the cycle. Think real carefully about the assumptions that go into these things, because sometimes they make you do stupid stuff, and sometimes they stop you from doing good stuff. When you do numbers, it's to make decisions too. Therefore, the so what? Risk of contra accounts, any contra accounts. I'm going to give you some examples. Balance sheet contra accounts, revenue contra accounts, off balance sheet crap. It is an absolute mine and pit of stuff that will kill you. And you know, that's what happened with a bunch of these companies I'm going to mention. So here are examples, okay? Expenses that could be great investments. Okay, the fact that it's called an expense means nothing to me. In fact, in a lot of the business, they capitalize it. You build a plant, you capitalize it. You don't start expensing it until it's producing. Okay, we build a branch, we don't capitalize it. We have a negative cash flow for a couple of years, and then hopefully by the 5th year, it's making $1 million a year for eternity, or so far. Bankers, same thing. Okay, and that's private bankers, investment bankers, Chase wealth managers. Those investments pay off over time. Expense allocations. I got to JPMorgan. This is true, by the way. Because the company was dominated by the investment bank, everything was skewed towards the investment bank. Everything. Cheap funding, investment bank. They even took things like HR costs. They lumped them. So HR costs included pension, medical, executive comp, expat, all these departments. They added it together, and they charged it out on head count. Really? Expat was 100% for the investment bank. Executive comp was 100% for the investment bank. The subsidy of the trading floors, we were subsidizing the investment bank $2 billion a year, which I immediately fixed. Not to punish anyone, because it caused huge misallocation of capital. The big loser in all that was the consumer bank. And I'm still quite sensitive about, we did the same thing with, I'll give you a little example. Capacity in the computer center was charged out to everybody, whereas the extra capacity, which is quite expensive, was necessary and required for these businesses, but not for those businesses. This is not a waste of time to get this right. And so when you all see your allocated expenses, you may spend no time on it, but you shouldn't be paying for capacity we need for payment systems. That should be paid for by payment systems. And all it does over time is cause huge misallocation and analyze sales comp. And when I got to the company, this is always true, analyze, I mean, it always goes bad. It always morphs. Don't assume it's okay. People see things, they get paid for things they shouldn't get paid for, they don't mention it. And I'll just give you one example, but I would have 50. When I got to the company, we paid the Treasury sales force based upon estimated revenues going forward. That was it. And almost no adjustments later on. And it's staggering. Branches, well, I can give you a lot of examples about branches. Bank One hadn't opened a branch in 5 years. Chase hadn't opened a branch in 5 years. They never refurbished their branches. But at least Bank One, by the time we did the merger, we were making $1 million plus profit a branch a year, 2,300 branches. Chase was making zero. Partially because of the allocations I mentioned, partially because no one seemed to care about them, stuff like that. But we should always analyze these. I mean, these branches have been usually profitable. And what we don't, and this goes back to accounting again, we don't give a branch credit for a credit card. So when they create a Sapphire account, that's worth $700. I think they create 1 million accounts a year in the branches. That's $700 million of value. I'm going to give a couple of quick examples here. And we do these NPVs about why we should close the branch. And we should do them. We should be disciplined. I think for the most part, NPVs might work. But they don't always work. And you got to use your common sense sometimes. Banksville branch, we're going to close it. It's kind of small. They show me that, and now I'm getting 100 complaints. Literally, there's a campaign. Every small business there's 200 or 300 consumers. Banksville is 6 miles. They said it's 6 miles to the closest branch. The biggest competitors were us and other branches in Greenwich. It's a 6-mile drive from the next closest branch. And I looked at that, and that was making 500 or 600,000 profit. I said, if you close that branch, you know what's going to happen? What would happen the day we closed it? Who's going to open in the same spot? Yeah, or that good Connecticut bank. And does a little lady want to drive 6 miles in the winter on those windy roads? And is the branch more profitable than it kind of looks? And to me, that wasn't the NPV, it was the pawn blocking the queen. While we're cutting costs, waste cutting, I also did something, I opened the partners room. And a lot of people told me, this is just how I think about what you do and what you don't do. Do the right thing anyway, whether it looks good or it looks bad. The whole operating committee said, don't do it. The partners room is going to cost $1.5 million a year, et cetera, et cetera. And I was, yeah, but we don't know each other. And if we don't do it, it'll be years before we know each other. And, I call it, it's a good expense. It's a judgment call. You could argue, I know a lot of you enjoy it. Do the right thing and explain it. Don't do that thing because you think it'll look bad for you or hurt morale a little bit. So Chick-fil-A, there's a great article in the paper, how they're using satellites and stuff like that and drones and now they got down to 13 seconds of sandwich through the drive-through line. That's what you got to be thinking. How do you make it better? Better, all the time. Full and constant assessment, the way you do this stuff, a lot of what I've been talking here, always look, always learn. It's the only way. Look at competition, go to other companies, go to their branches, go on the road trips, take people out, take each other, when you go out, take management teams to dinner. When you see clients, you want to, when they tell us that we're making a mistake, it's a gift. And by the way, very often they tell you that's a mistake, but it's not your area, and some people just tend to ignore it. No, write it down and then send it to the person. Always acknowledge your mistakes. You'll learn a lot having wine at the bar with people. And then it's okay to be a fast follower. Like, we are in our own echo chamber sometimes. And that's not bad, that just happens. And this is the way you get out of the echo chamber. Hit the road, go to the branch, talk to small businesses, constantly assess, constantly engage. You have to have great controls, constantly review financial operational detail. And always, that's a discipline. That's like exercising. We had a printing, this commercial credit printing press, and to print financial reports and stuff like that. And they said, we got to buy a new one. It cost $2 million, a Xerox 2000 or 2000, whatever it was. And I went in and said, no. I went to the tech people and said, we don't need to print all that stuff. Get rid of some. They came back very proudly and got rid of 8%. I was like, okay, well, again, my mother could have done that. And then we needed it again, and I did it. So I literally got in a room. We were a small company at the time. I got every report. There were 100. And I put on top the names of the people getting it. And I had you all come in, say, do you read this report? What's in it? And I cut it 50% immediately. Now, then later on, they come back to me and say, we have to do it. We're bigger and stuff like that. So I bought one of these machines for $2 million. We just bought Primerica. I'm down in their printing plant, and the guy's showing me his plant, and I'm saying, great. And they see one of the machines. They say, hey, I just bought one of those. He said, how much did you pay for it? I said, $2 million. I said, how much did you pay? How much did he pay? $50,000. You know why? He bought it from a bankrupt company. It was still in the box. That's all. And let's do that a little bit every now and then. As it turns out, this is a true story. Some of those reports were being printed and shipped to people in Dallas. We had a company called Gulf Insurance. And they were being shipped to a person that died a year earlier. And then I asked, what are they doing with it? And all that stuff was being put into a warehouse. And that's dumb. And you CFOs, you're going to find some of this. Furniture that's been sitting in a warehouse for 10 years, just give it away. Use your common sense. Close down the warehouse. Like audit, whitewashing. We don't do this here, never did. But at Bank One, every audit report was like how great we were. I was like, what? We suck. How's it possible? And they said, well, we don't want to document anything for the regulators and lawyers. And I said, no, I want an honest assessment, because you're better off being a great company, which will reduce your exposure, than hiding your weaknesses. And so, the audit report should be tough and teach us all the time. Kill bureaucracy all the time, and relentlessly. It comes in a lot of forms. Weed that garden. It's a mindset. Home Depot, when you walk into Home Depot and you walk into their global galactic headquarters, the sign above says Store Support Center. It reminds people every day they are there because of the store. And we have to remember that. All of us, particularly staff, we are there because there's a client in a branch or an investment bank in front of a client. And that is an important mindset. And then you can use things like war rooms and all these things, review customer complaints. Very often, I always look at customer complaints, and sometimes I read them and I know the policy, and I call up someone in this room and I say, I agree with the customer. We coulda, shoulda, woulda. And you gotta change your mindset. ATMs, when I got to JPMorgan, this happened periodically. My wife called me, she was in Walgreens, the ATM didn't work. I tell the people running the ATM thing at Bank One, the guy calls me, I said, no, it's working. My wife calls me a week later and says, it's not working. I call him up, he said, no, it's working. So I said, you do me a favor, get in your car and drive out there. And he drives out there, and it's not working. It's squiggly. Now, as it turns out, we have an outside vendor tracking this stuff. And I said, I fire the vendor, and I want to be paid back the last 6 months. Now we track it ourselves. That stuff happens all the time. That black car story, you all know the black car story, never happened at JPMorgan. It did happen when we took over Shearson. And I was going outside one day, and there was, literally, after I said 50 black cars, they had given away those books to everybody. people were waiting until 7 o'clock to go home. They're supposed to just take it to the closest train station. They would pick up their dinner money. No one paid attention to it. There was one woman who took it to Glen Cove or something and back she came in early in the morning, went back. Her boss knew about it. And I said to the boss, I said, I can get her own car and drive her for a third what that cost. Literally. And I did do it. I took away the books. I did stuff, changed a bunch of rules and stuff like that. So branches should have a branch administration group where nothing gets sent to the branch that doesn't go through this group. Because if they're getting stuff from HR, risk, legal, compliant, trading, audit, finance, options, equity, they're overwhelmed. There should be a group that says, no, and then they organize in a way that makes sense. Because I used to go to Smith Barney and they all complain. I complain. They say, well, I said, I told you this. They said, you did not. I said, we sent you a memo. We give you this. And one of the branch managers came and saw me, said, he took a FedEx box, a big one, dropped it in front of me and said, yeah, I get that every week from you guys. Where in it is it? So we just changed a little thing, common sense, a little booklet called, I think we called it Since We Last Met, or You Must Read This, that had a summary page and the stuff they have to read, and that whenever we go out, they've got that part. And so it's just important, just little things. We had 500 coaches at JPMorgan. When I first came in, the operating committee was, I was going through all these things, and this came up. I said, 500 coaches. I kept on bringing it up, and someone in the operating committee said, Jamie, are you going to do this every meeting? Are you going to micromanage every single decision? And of course, I said, no, I'm not going to micromanage every single decision. I'm sorry, it's your decision. I came in that Monday, I said, I changed my mind. I'm going to micromanage this one. I want all coaches out by the end of the week. And I'm not doing it to save money. Whose job is it to coach? We had outsourced management. I mean, seriously. And I also said to the operating committee, at the end of 1 year, any one of you can bring back a coach you personally have to know about and think it's the right thing to do. But in my whole career, I've never seen it work, like when we're trying to save someone. It just doesn't mean we shouldn't try. In my whole career, I've never seen it. Maybe there's one example where it actually worked. Kill meetings, you got to kill meetings. Meetings got to start on time, they got to end on time. Someone's got to run it. I mean, I go to a lot of meetings and no one knows who's running it. We're too nice, we collaborate too much. There should be a purpose to a meeting. There should always be a follow-up list. An example of bureaucracy is always the meeting after the meeting. Whereas, generally with me, if you can't say it in front of my partners, don't bother to come say it to me. I'm not your messenger. Lay it on the table. It's okay. Sometimes, obviously, there's something that's different you want to talk about privately, but usually it's a go-around. It's a rope-a-dope. It's an end run. Usually, don't allow that kind of stuff. Mistakes I made. This is going to be short. But I always say this is an anatomy of mistakes. Didn't have the right people in the room. Didn't work it hard enough. Didn't have a decision-making process that made sense. Didn't get the right inputs. Made assumptions that I've made so many. The London whale, which I'm sure when I die, no matter what I do, it's going to say, Jamie, his resume blotted by the London whale. But the mistake wasn't complexity of the derivatives, folks. It didn't go through the regular risk committee. And I didn't know that. But I had signs looking back. And it should go through a risk committee. It didn't go through the risk committee exactly precisely because it was risky. And they wanted to play it close to their vest. This goes back to hoarding information, which is a disease, okay? Cloud. I always thought cloud, this goes a long time ago, because I said, cloud is outsourcing. I like doing the stuff ourselves. I still do like it. And this is a mistake I made. At one point, I said, what? We're going to take the operating committee out to Silicon Valley. This goes back to why it's important to get on the road. When I went to see Tencent and Ping An and Alibaba, it's amazing what you learn. And we flew out there, and we sat down with cloud and Amazon and stuff like that. And flying back, I said, I made a huge mistake. We're going cloud right away. And it just opens up your eyes. And you got to be obviously willing to change your mind. I remember when I got to Bank One, Oh, it's a mistake. One of my bigger ones. I've been there for not quite a year, and I'm in Louisville, and our business has been shrinking. We had open branches. Customer sat sucked. We had 7 deposit systems. I was trying to fix all that, but I was in a branch, and I realized that the branch across the street, hours were 9 to 5, and ours were 10 to 4. I said, whoa, that's not so good. And I called up, and they said, well, we're different. We're not that kind of bank. I said, do me a favor, let's find out for all of our branches, we had 2,000, a little over 2,000, what our hours are versus the average competitor, not the best in town. And they said, well, how are we going to do that? I said, well, email the branch manager and tell them to tell you. And so we collated this. Our average branch were open 2 hours less a day. And I went home, it was a Friday, I went home, embarrassed. I came in on Monday, it just so happened the whole branch system was there. And here's what I said to him. I apologize. I thought I was a pretty good CEO. I made a mistake. I should have recognized this much sooner. I said, on the other hand, none of you told me. Like, what's wrong with you two? Like, seriously, not a salesperson, not a branch manager, not a regional manager, not a district, never came up. And then I said, we have to change. And someone said, well, morale's already bad. And they went on and on about morale because we had to change the work hours, the time for the people, when the cash gets sent in, the settlement, the financial. And I said, but we got to change it. We're here for customers, I said, morale sucks because we suck. Morale will get better when we're better. What the hell is culture? I struggle with this one a little bit because, and I think it's all the things I'm speaking about here, by the way. I don't think you can put it in one little thing. But there are good people and bad people, and you know that. I think we're almost all good people. There are people you don't trust, and people mean different things sometimes. You don't trust them because they lie. They shave the truth. They're not particularly honest. Or you don't trust them because you don't trust their judgment. Those are very different things, but what are their motives in life? I mean, and this goes back to, what's the role of our bank? I think it's to lift up society, to help people. You create culture by doing, not saying. Recognition is important. I was never particularly good at, as most of you know. But it's an amazing way. Yeah, I know they're laughing, yeah. This is why I was at a town hall one day, and someone says, what do you do to show recognition to your direct reports? And a couple of my direct reports were in the room, and they burst out laughing. But I told them, and I meant it, that they do know, and I learned lessons in this. I learned a lesson by watching Ted Lasso and David Novak, that recognition is a form of humility and acknowledgement that they did something that you didn't, that they taught you something. And so I do think it's very important that we get it right. And I did make biscuits for I had Judy make biscuits for my operating committee. But then I also came in the next day and I realized, I gave you biscuits. And they all took them and said, oh, thank you. They're supposed to give biscuits to the boss. And I already mentioned, fire bad clients. I've done it before, corporate clients, and then this wealthy guy had come into a branch yelling and screaming. So the branch people said, he sent me a note, he complained, he's philanthropic, I knew him. It happened a second time, and the third time I actually called up the branch manager. I said, what is he doing? And he told me what the guy does. And it was disgusting. I couldn't even say it here. And it's just one of those people that likes to beat up and yell at people because he's a big, powerful thing. I called him up and said, so-and-so, I want you to take all your business out of the bank. He said, you can't do that. I said, you're damn straight I can do it. And by the way, and you're not going to treat my people that way. Don't allow it. And it doesn't matter anywhere because, in any client, okay, if you don't do business with a client, like life will go on. Hire back your guards. I've told this story about we outsourced all our guards in the United States, and a union guy came to see me yelling at me, and the bureaucracy didn't want me to see him. I see everybody. He ran the SEIU, a tough union, and he said, you outsource your guards to save money. And he said, but the same people working the same job, making the same salary. He said, you're saving money because the benefits programs, which were worth $30,000 to a family, they cut to $15,000. And then they saved you $7,500. They kept $7,500. And I called up the person who did it, who was very smart and very senior. I said, I want them all back on our payroll. I want them grandfathered in pension plans. JP Morgan does not need to make our profit off the backs of our guards. Leading the team, regular business reviews, like regular war rooms, snapshots, bureaucracy busting, that type of thing. Attack the problem, all dead cats on the table. I mean, our biggest mistakes are when people kind of think it's a problem, but they don't bring it up. On the table, in the right room. Loyalty is earned, and it's also earned by getting the full input, and that you've had a chance to have your input. You may, sometimes we all get things we don't want exactly right, but you earn it. And so after you've had a chance of input, after you've had a chance to put the dead cats on the table, then you should get on board, but not before that. And I hate things I hear like, stay in your lane. Absolutely do not stay in your lane. That is a bureaucratic, stupid comment. You're not a good partner. You won't let stuff go. On each one, if someone said that to me, I say right off the bat, like, what do you mean? What do they do? Maybe they're right. As opposed to these blanket statements that are bad. And you got to work on this one. There's nothing wrong with disagreement, by the way, ever. Disagreement is a good thing. Make it fun. That's our job, to have fun in life and make everything we do fun. Invite mom. When you go on the road and you're going to have management teams or stuff like that, and invite mom and dad. When I went to Kenya, I had Pauline's mother and Peter's mother and their families there. I mean, what a gift to us to see what those moms have accomplished with those kids. And moms and dads love to see us. And then also when you go out, take the management teams to dinner with spouse. They love to see the spouse. I mean, it's a kick. And you learn a lot about each other. Why it's hard to get good growth and innovate? Test and learning is nothing that you shouldn't be testing and learning. You can kill innovation with too much resource, too little resource, or bureaucracy, including NPV. And you got to really think through what you're trying to accomplish in some of these things. I'm going to give examples. Conversions. Both JPMorgan and Bank want to stop all the conversions because they're costly, they take time, they divert resources. Meanwhile, you're dying a slow death. You've got 7 loan systems and 5 deposit systems and 26 general ledgers. You just do them. And then but what happens is you get better at it over time. And so transformation is a constant thing. And so don't try to make it look better than it is. And that happens all the time in companies. Allocate this way, make it look better. I'm going to give you some specific examples. And always do the good, the bad, the ugly. That will make you better. Doing just the good makes you worse. Doing the good, the bad, the ugly makes you get better versus the competition. There are good expenses and bad expenses, good revenues and bad revenues. I hate the concept of cutting costs. The concept should always be cutting waste. Management tricks and tools, thorough reviews with or without you in the room, have brainstorming sessions with wine, have fun, write memos yourself. Don't always let other people write it. Emails, when we ask questions of someone, and even if I ask Teresa to do it, and she asks Derek Waldron to do it, who asked somebody else to do it, that memo should come directly back to me from that person, not back up the chain. And if I call that person directly, it comes directly to me. They should copy their bosses. The other thing is slow, bureaucratic, but the really important thing is it makes that person's job more important. You're enabling them. You're telling them the job is more important. Okay, definitely celebrate, but emphasize the negatives. Have a follow-up list of your own. No management pablum. Like when you write stuff that comes out, try to get rid of the friggin' jargon. Speak to, like you're speaking to someone to explain something to them, and don't waste people's time. Work smart. Most people, they waste so much time. Like double read emails, triple read them. Take care of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, it doesn't work. Here's one we got to change. 100%, a lot of you have been meetings with me for the last 20 years. I don't think you ever see me not do the pre-read and not get 100% of my attention. And people are going to meetings all the time, and they're getting notifications and texts and reading email. You got to stop. And you got to stop it everywhere. It's disrespectful. It's people, I didn't know that. Yeah, well, of course you don't know because you weren't paying attention. And another thing, don't be lazy about this one. Write a press release about a new product, a new service, and do the FAQs. as an exercise because it makes you answer a lot of questions. And people simply don't, they want to have a quick verbal thing. No, when you write it down, it's amazing. It focuses the mind quite a bit about how you explain what you're doing to people. Push authority as low as you can. Take the other side of the argument. Be a skeptic, but not a cynic. And always answer the question, what would you do if you're queen or king for a day? And that's the big one. What would you do? What you gonna do? Okay, I'll end where I started. I hope this is productive. At least I feel better.